And away we go. It's a Tuesday, 8 o'clock. Me and the boys are sitting around the table. It's open season time, and there has been so much NBA action, guys. Let's just get into it. What do you think was the best performance you witnessed outside of a Boston Celtic this week? What was the best individual performance you saw out there? Who wants to take it?
Michael Porter Jr. It's got to be Michael Porter Jr., and I'm so happy that it is. That team is a superstar away from being legitimate. Yes, they have a great regular season, but I liken them to that Hawks team of the 13-14 era. They don't have a star. I love Jokic, and he's a top 5 center in the league, but what does that mean nowadays? Michael Porter Jr. is a guy who's 6'10", he's wiry, he's lanky. If he can play any defense and shoot the ball like he did in college, like he did early on in this bubble season, they're going to be a problem. They're going to be an absolute nightmare behind the two teams in LA.
Yeah, I was actually going to go Porter, but that's sorry. My boy Bol has been tearing up the bubble. I'm so upset that we drafted so many guys that don't have the stock and athleticism that Bol has.
You don't think that was a good pick?
Tremont Waters, he won MVP for the Red Claws. He's quite a steal, 52. No, I think he's great, and it also sets up a nightmare matchup for literally any team they play, putting him at the 4 or sometimes even the 3 with Porter Jr. I'm a big fan of Bol, been a fan of his dad too, so pumped to see him finally playing that.
Oh my God. How are you guys possibly overlooking our boy TJ Warren? He has gone off, had his first 50-point game. He is looking like a completely different guy in the bubble. He's always been a bucket, but what he's able to put together with the absences of Malcolm Brogdon and Domantas Sabonis, I mean, Indiana looks even better than when those two guys were fully healthy. Just giving the ball to TJ Warren and letting him go to work. He is an offensive nightmare for teams to have to guard right now, and I'm looking forward to seeing what else he has in his arsenal for us moving forward. He's on his way to a really great night. Started out 8 for 8 tonight, actually, so far. Definitely on his way to another great performance. That'll make probably 3 straight games, 30 points or more since the bubble started. And he's probably going to end up being the bubble's leading scorer unless Harden keeps free throwing and four-stepping his way to 40-point games.
Horrible to watch.
Yeah, talk about an ugly 49, 9, and 8. My God, I watched that game the other night. It was like 49 free throws, 9 turnovers, and 8 three-pointers. I mean, it was just tough to watch. If I'm picking, I'm probably picking Luka Doncic today, who in a win over Sacramento went for 34, 20 rebounds, and 12 assists. I mean, this guy just continues to impress. I think he's still only 21 years old. So, I mean, he's the guy that I got to look at. In all honesty, if you give me the truth serum, I wanted to say Porter, because I look at that and I was going to ask you guys, moving forward, they have a pretty I thought the Blazers were pretty big against the Celtics, but the Nuggets could be really big if they start Porter at the 3, they start Bol at the 4, and Jokic at the 5. I don't know necessarily what they would do there, but that would be a nightmare.
Yeah, that's a tough team, and Denver is looking like, I mean, they had the steal of the draft for sure, and Michael Porter at pick 14. All the teams that passed on Michael Porter Jr., shame on them. I just don't understand how you could possibly see that guy who was number 1 prospect coming out of high school. Just had some injury concerns, sure. Yeah, there's some red flags, but how do you not take a chance on him and let him fall to Denver? I remember him falling, and I was just praying Danny Ainge would trade up and grab him. Obviously, that didn't happen. I'll tell you what, Michael Porter Jr. would have looked really good on the Celtics with the wings we already have now. But hey, let the Denver Nuggets take him, and take what's probably another superstar to add to the mix. I mean, that team has future championship written all over it.
So leading up to that draft, Michael Porter Jr. was the talk of the NBA, number 1 prospect before he got hurt going to Missouri. And the Celtics that year, I believe we were supposed to have a lottery pick, potentially have a lottery pick. And I watched all the videos, his highlight reels in high school and college. He looked like a young Kevin Durant. Obviously, it's unfortunate that he had the back injury, but we're finally seeing, sitting a whole year out, the talent's there. And every prospect on that draft said, who's the best player in this draft, and every single one said Michael Porter Jr. So really happy for him to come back, and he's going to be a star for a long time.
I think we're seeing what he can do with some actual minutes too, because I mean, they were giving him like 7 minutes here, 5 minutes there, 3 minutes there, 15 minutes here. And it's tough to perform when you're getting that spotty of minutes. He's seen a healthy 25 minutes the last game, and then I think he saw 37 in the OT game. So he's getting some good minutes, and he's been really productive over the last two. So definitely got to look at it as something that he's building on. He's definitely one of the most exciting guys that I feel like is, can transform a team at this point in time, because you're looking at they're basically just adding an all-star onto that team when that guy performs. And I mean, it's kind of like what we get out of some of our team with, some of the all-stars here in Boston, but they can just add an all-star to that team that starts 3 or 4 already quality players, borderline all-stars. I mean, I think that's going to be huge for the Nuggets.
Don't forget about Bol. He's an all-star.
We're all bullish. We're all bullish on the Nuggets, and for good reason. They didn't surprise me. You know what I mean? Michael Porter Jr. getting minutes. I think everybody here on the panel thought he would be good. I think the Suns have come to the bubble looking to prove something. I think in a Grizzlies tailspin where they're 0-3 and they might not even make the 8-9 play-in game, which is kind of ridiculous considering where we started. But the Suns have looked great, and Devin Booker, who I have routinely trashed, and I think he's kind of a losing basketball player despite the talent. We know Ayton's a freak, but the team as a whole, as an offense and defense, have just played better. I mean, you look at the way Utah tried against LA today, and it was a great effort, but it seemed inevitable. When the Suns are playing these games, it kind of seems like they think they can win. And they can translate that with no crowd in an empty court. And I just think that's really impressive for a young team with all the talent in the world, but traditionally has kind of been losing players.
Would you take Booker over Bradley Beal? Would anyone here take?
I think they're the same loser, and I think Devin Booker's an inch taller, so sure.
I would probably take Booker over Bradley Beal because he's younger.
Yeah, if you're going to start the team out, I understand that. But if we're talking pure talent here, I still think Bradley Beal's got a little bit of an edge on Booker. But Booker's really nipping at his heels, I think, to overtake him.
I was done with Booker in the offseason when I think he was doing like a workout in the defensive. They tried to guard him. And he's like, "What are you doing?" Like, don't play defense on me. I don't know. I just never really liked Devin Booker, but I will say this time.
That was a double team in a pickup game, and he was visibly frustrated. It was a little bit of a bitch thing to do, but at the same time, I can kind of understand it. It's a pickup game. Like, can we just do one-on-one? Let's be real, guys.
I agree with what Frank said. He's a losing basketball player. Reminds me a lot of a smaller Carmelo Anthony. Not a big fan, but I will say you bring Aaron Baines into that team, and then things happen. The big Australian making things happen. DeAndre is much better.
Also for Booker, though, think about, we just talked about the value in a guy like Michael Porter Jr. at 14. I mean, he went at, what did Booker go at? He was the 13th pick, I believe, that year. So, I mean, you think about the value that you're getting at that spot. The Suns have crapped out so many 4 picks. We've seen Dario Saric, or not Saric.
Dragon Bender.
Dragon Bender. We've seen Josh Jackson. We've seen a bunch of number 4 picks that they've done terrible with. It's funny that we're asking for so much out of Booker, him being taken as a 14th pick. If you had somebody give you Booker-like production at the 14th pick, you feel like you'd be pretty happy about that.
The 14th.
So much more out of him, because he's had a couple of good years on a losing squad. So
he's also no longer the 14th draft pick. Now he's an established NBA player who's a questionable superstar. So the value thing is gone. You're going to start paying him soon. It was valuable already. Even if he left, it was still a valuable pick. He's a superstar. The reason we expect so much from him is because you should be a winner in basketball if you're a superstar. There's only 5 of you on the court.
Yeah, I don't see Devin Booker ever leading a franchise to a title. He'll be a good second, maybe third option on a championship team.
Third.
Ray Allen was a third option.
Exactly. What shooting guards are the best second option? It's either the power forward, the small forward. And the shooter is always a third guy.
I just feel like he's a guy that still has
a little bit of killing in this league. Still can probably average 30 points a game in this league. I mean, I don't think that's necessarily your third option. I mean, Ray Allen averaging like 18 a night. And I get it. Ray Allen was great, but I don't know. I think Booker's a guy that can put up 30 in this league.
Booker is absolutely he can be a second option on an NBA title team. You put him with an Anthony Davis, there's no reason those two can't go to the title. Really. Do you see what the Suns gave Booker to work with? Josh Jackson over Jamal Murray
playoff series victory, and the biggest headlines from it are Drew Holiday and Rajon Rondo.
Josh Jackson over De'Aaron Fox, Dragan Bender over Jamal Murray or Donovan Mitchell. Are you kidding me? They have done a terrible job drafting for the Suns, and the Pelicans completely mismanaged AD as well. You can't fully put the blame on the players. Great organizations do win championships. Shut out Jerry Krause. All right? Like, you got to give some respect to them, their talent, and what they're able to do with the guys, the team that's been built around them, and the coaching that is helping bring the team to whatever level they can.
Great players.
Think about this. It takes guys 7 years to win a championship. How many times have we seen this with guys like Jordan, LeBron? I mean, not every guy is your Kobe Bryant and wins a championship that quick into the league. I think Anthony Davis still has plenty of time to be judged on what he can do in the playoffs potentially. I mean, he's with a much different team. Never really had the talent around him, I would say, with the Pelicans. I mean, what did he have there? But I can see why he wanted to get out, and I think he's got plenty of years for him to be able to be. He could turn around and be. They could win a title this year, and he could be a big part of that. You know, he's already up there as far as Defensive Player of the Year. So I wouldn't say that the book is necessarily out on Anthony Davis as a loser.
But organizations do not win championships in basketball. There's no great organization that has won a championship without great players. There are a couple examples of great players that have won championships on not great organizations. You can find it. If you're a soccer player or a basketball player in a pro sport, you have massive effect on the outcome of the game, which is why if you don't win in the NBA and you're a top 5-10 player, there's a problem with that. When Stephon Marbury was at his best, he was a top 7 player in the league. He made the playoffs. Like, Anthony Davis was bad for so long in terms of the wins column. How do you average 30 and 13 and lose more than 40 games? Like, I'm sorry. And I love Anthony Davis. If I was I'd draft him first maybe over anybody besides Doncic and Tatum. But he has lost an awful lot. If you put him with Booker, that's a team that's going to score 120 points a game and win nothing.
Yeah, exactly. I think Anthony Davis this year has really changed in terms of actually playing like great defense and buying into the system. But to think that Devin Booker could be a second option on a championship team, let's look at all the teams that have more than one superstar. It's the power forward, the small forward, like the league. The wings are everything right now. It's not the shooting guard is the third option for a lot of these championship teams.
I still think the shooting guard is still pretty good out there. You talk about guys like Bradley Beal that are available. I think there's a lot of, CJ McCollum, he's the number 2 player on a pretty good Blazers squad that was in the Western Conference Finals last year. So, I just think there's a lot of good shooting guards still. Yeah, there's wings, but shooting guards still kind of play into the positionless babasketball, I would say.
Are any of those teams winning championships, though? I don't see the Blazers winning a championship. You put Booker or Bradley Beal on the Lakers, he's the third option, obviously.
If you put Anthony Davis on the Trailblazers, they might win. That might do it, and here's why: because they would have a bulldog. You needed Dame Dollars. Anthony Davis, the reason he can't win and the reason Devin Booker can't, if they were the first and second option on a championship team, you know who the third guy would have to be? Somebody like a Draymond, who I think is a little overrated, but that quintessential glue guy, a Patrick Beverley. Those two guys don't have it between the ears in a playoff game. I don't think so. And I don't see it from either one of them. Devin Booker had a game-winning shot today. Maybe he's got a little bit of balls. But Anthony Davis has shown me none of that.
I just feel like we say this so many times, like with guys that until they actually are in the moment, it's like, if Derek Jeter was drafted by the Royals, he wouldn't have had any of those clutch moments, and it's like until you're actually in those positions, you never really can have a chance to do it. So I feel like until Anthony Davis is actually on a decent contender, can he actually even have a chance to be able to do these things?
Can we also say that when Devin Booker was in college, he was on like one of the worst Kentucky teams that since Calipari's been there. They did the documentary on him and they lost a bunch of games. He's kind of like reminds me of like Kyrie Irving. Talent's there. He can do everything. But is he going to lead you to a championship. I don't think so.
But he can't lead you to a championship with the Suns, though. I mean, put him on a decent team, I guess, is what I'm saying. I mean, these guys, it's so hard to judge them until they actually are on a team that's in a position to fight.
Davis carried the Pelicans at least to the playoffs, and I believe they won a round, and then he started getting hurt. Before getting swept, but that team was a joke.
Yeah, they won a round against the Portland Trail Blazers, who the next year went to the Western Conference Finals. So, I mean, you got to give some props. They also had Boogie and AD working real well together before Boogie actually got hurt. The whole AD is a loser narrative. That needs to go. He's not a loser. He's been on one of the worst teams in the NBA with literally no help around him. I mean, if your second best player is a 30-plus-year-old Rajon Rondo, you're probably not going to be able to win that many games.
Didn't he have Drew Holiday on his team? He's one of the best two-way players in the NBA.
Drew Holiday was hurt a lot, though, I feel like.
Not in the playoff series.
Yeah.
Not in the playoff series. I said it earlier. They are the narrative of that playoff series win. It isn't AD.
You don't think AD put up good stats in that? You think if we pull it back, AD didn't put up good stats in that playoff run?
I'm sure much like A-Rod, his stats will always be fine, but up until he does something to help them win a championship, he was a loser. You can change the narrative. Anthony Davis is 25 still, has plenty of time to change the narrative. But what the narrative is right now is that he has done nothing. With all that talent, a top 5 player. If Kevin Durant didn't have Russell Westbrook, he still would have gone to the playoffs. He would have won a playoff series, and the narrative wouldn't have been his point guard. It wouldn't have been Reggie Jackson at the time. It would have been Kevin Durant is a mother freaking problem.
Yeah.
Anthony Davis should be unguardable. 6'10", can shoot the ball from anywhere, can dribble, was a point guard up until Kentucky, basically. I mean, that guy has all the talent in the world. That guy in the NBA should be winning 50 games a year. With nobody, with absolutely nobody, with you and me, because he's that good. And I believe his talent is that great, but come on now.
Yeah, his talent, there's no other player in the NBA like him. His talent's off the charts. I feel like there's a couple, maybe Devin Bookers in the NBA. Anthony Davis is an absolute freak. Both ends of the floor. No one has the same level of talent that he does. It's just, does he, that killer instinct to go all in and lead a team to the playoffs? Obviously, he's kind of taking the coattail of LeBron right now, but you would have thought at the beginning of the year that it would have been AD's team the way that it started out. But this is LeBron's team. I don't know. Yeah, he's 25. He's got plenty of time. You would just talk about more at this point in his career. He is one of the most unique talents in the NBA.
So it's kind of like he's punished for being good. I mean, honestly, you guys are killing him because he's so good. Like in one vein, you're saying he's not clutch, but in the other vein, you're like he's the best. So
I like athletes that have that killer instinct that want. Like I've always been a Jaylen Brown fan, even when he wasn't. His talent wasn't there yet, but his confidence when he's on the court, he'll do whatever it takes to win a game. He thinks he's
except for that year that Kyrie was here, his confidence wasn't that high.
Well, that's
confidence was high. They hated each other.
Yeah,
it
wasn't
a team issue. Yeah. We wanted the embarrassment of riches. Danny Ainge was like, I can send 8 guys, 9 guys out there in NBA playoffs, which is a deep rotation. But they hated each other. He didn't take that into account. He should have shipped off some of those pieces. It was awful. They hated each other for so long. They underachieved.
Do you think if KG was on the Pelicans that they would have gone to the playoffs a couple more times?
I don't know. How well did he do with the Timberwolves?
He got the Western Conference Finals. He was an MVP.
Okay. What was his resume? What was his resume in the playoffs until he got with the Celtics? I mean, he got to the Western Conference Finals once. We said the same thing about Carmelo.
Well, hold on. LeBron was also, not a clutch player. He's got more postseason game winners than Jordan and Kobe at this point. Anthony Davis, I've already said, can change the narrative. You know what the narrative is right now? And rightfully, he's done nothing. He's done nothing. With all that talent, he's done nothing.
With all the talent. You keep talking about how Rajon Rondo. So you just want him to win 50 games in the regular season, and then you're cool. Like, that's the box that he's got to check for you.
I want him to show me that he's a player away from being on a championship team. On the Pelicans, he never showed, wow, if you get me another guy, we're going to win some games here. When they got him DeMarcus Cousins, they did get him a guy. They were 48 wins, correct me if I'm wrong. They were right about there. So he was.
What about pairing up with LeBron, though? I mean, you show them that he got with a good guy and how well he could be this year. I mean, it's probably going to be number 2 in Defensive Player of the Year.
Different player.
Right. So let's all right. Jimmy Butler. Would you think he's like a top 20 player in the NBA? Probably not. But he goes to Miami. He changes the entire team chemistry. We're going to work our ass off every game. Now Miami is all of a sudden, a potential maybe second, maybe third round team. Jimmy Butler's not one of the best players in the league, but he has that instinct that he wants to be the best player. He puts the time in, and every player in that locker room buys in. I don't see that type of player in Anthony Davis. It's more like lead by his example on the court. I'd rather take a Jimmy Butler type attitude. And that's why I was pissed when we didn't trade for him and got Gordon Hayward instead. Because
thank God we didn't trade for Jimmy Butler. Thank God.
What about the Kawhi trade? No, are you still? If it only took one of the Brooklyn first and Jaylen Brown and Ante Zizic at the time, and it had nothing to do with Kyrie Irving, and it was just about getting Kawhi Leonard. Was that because I was on the trade?
I am fine with not doing a trade. I would rather. Look, Kawhi was leaving to go to LA one way or another. There was no way he was staying in Boston for more than a year. Kyrie would have bolted. Kawhi would have bolted. We would have been left with Tatum and nothing else. I mean, we could have traded for AD too and had, hypothetically speaking, Kyrie, Gordon Hayward, Jimmy Butler, Kawhi Leonard and Anthony Davis, but I just don't see that team sticking together. Kawhi was dipping out. I'm glad we didn't make that trade. Long term, we have 2 young guys. The 2 Jays both had nights the other night, looking strong as can be. I mean, I would rather to see these 2 grow together, and the rest come up with all the great draft picks that they brought in. Really like the talent of some of these young guys. They're trying to build a Warriors-esque team, and I'm all.
But so Danny Ainge has been the GM for what now? 17 years, and we have 1 championship. And to think that if Kawhi came here, do you think the Raptors are upset that they traded for Kawhi and won a championship?
Not one bit. That'll be the one title.
We've been hearing about these draft picks for years, and then we're screwed this year. We have 3 freaking first round picks, and they're all in the mid-teens and 20s. They lose all the value if you just hold on to them forever. You could have traded that the Grizzlies pick last year and got something significant. Now we're going to get a 14th pick.
Well, that's why I'm not happy with the way Danny Ainge has done some things. I love Danny. I think he's done a really great job. There's some moves I feel like I wish he could have made. Maybe he tried to make them and just couldn't get them done for what he felt was fair value. But he absolutely could have given up some extra picks to move up in the draft for Michael Porter Jr. the year he was, dropping through the draft. I think that you cannot judge Danny Ainge for only winning 1 title. He gave us a 4-year window realistically to win another championship. In that, Doc Rivers squandered away, I think, Game 7 against the Lakers 2012, or 2011, or 2010. And then Doc Rivers squandered the coach with a 20-point lead. 20-point lead. 20 should have been able to past that.
It wasn't a coaching thing.
Should have been able to
3 7-footers for playing volleyball.
He should have been 3 7-footers for playing volleyball and not let that game slip. And then you've also got Kevin Garnett hurting his knee, and he just wasn't the same after he hurt his knee. So I'm tired of the Danny Ainge trash talk because he gave us an opportunity for the most exciting Celtics basketball I've ever seen in my life. Yes, he only got 1 championship, but he did get 1. And you know what? He's built us. He got out of Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce better than anyone probably ever could have, and cut ties there and got us the Brooklyn picks, and it now has us rebuilt into, guess what, a perennial contender that's going to be at the top of the league for a long time. So I'm done.
So if it wasn't for Danny Ainge being buddies with Kevin McHale and us getting KG for a load of crap, and then some Russian owner of the Nets coming in just demanding that they build this team around Deron Williams and Joe Johnson and giving us 4 first-round picks. I mean, it's great that we got those trades, but I mean, I don't know how those happened, but that's pretty much has been his entire tenure here. I mean, a really good trade was getting Tatum. That trade a couple of years ago was unreal. And getting Isaiah Thomas, but at times, every trade deadline, what does every Celtics fan want? We're like, can we please get somebody? Can we please get somebody? And then we don't do anything. And then the playoffs happen, and we have a bunch of rookies out there playing against veterans in the playoffs, and they can't perform.
My issue is that he has this dream of nothing but wing players playing. Like, where is the Bowl pick? Why do we have Brad Wanamaker? Why do we have Kadeem Allen? They fit his narrative. If it was up to Danny Ainge, everybody on the Celtics would be between 6'5" and 6'9", and they would all shoot the three, and they would all play defense, and we would switch every pick and roll, and we would play Butler, Brad Stevens basketball. I get it. I really do. But if your claim to fame is that one Brooklyn, and it was a haul, and don't forget, I think it was 3 picks from the Nets, but we got a first round from LA, from Doc Rivers. We got a first round for trading a coach. It's not like he hasn't made big deals, and I'm not mad at him that he stands pat a lot. I was mad he didn't get rid of Terry Rozier and Kyrie. You couldn't keep them both. It was clearly toxic. That was a bad decision. And my problem with his trades, the protections. The protections, top 6 protected, top 9 protected. When did these things become a thing? He had a pick. One of the picks was deferred from the Nets. It was this year. If Memphis ends up tanking, we get a lottery pick, but it can't be the first 6, which is a stupid thing to begin with. And if they completely, and if they make the playoffs, we get no picks. One of those picks from the Nets ends up being a nothing. We end up with 0 picks. We end up with 2 picks when we got 3 because he's getting protections out.
Do you think that Danny Ainge has a spreadsheet of all the draft picks he has? Because how does he even keep up with all these draft picks? Like, you go into the draft like, I still have another that I traded for in 2011.
He's going to use them.
I know he doesn't trade them. That's a problem. He's drafting 14 players drafting the season. You get the French Croissant Yabusele, and Draymond Green. That can do absolutely anything out there. Absolutely anything out there.
Sell tickets for the Red Claws.
He was really watching him. Not for the bad, but
there are other players that we can draft in that area, like on NBA rosters. And instead of trading the pick away, like he has to win every trade. It can't be even.
That's the way to survive that. He has to win every trade. I don't know if he cares about it, but I think so. With all the things that he has chosen to pass up on.
Granted, I mean, when we win the deal, it's like, Danny Ainge guy over. Like, that's awesome, Boston fans. But then there are times where GMs just don't want to trade with them because he's not going to be an even trade. And I think that's kind of hurt in the NBA now.
Well, this is music to my ears, and I gotta, I can't believe it. We're actually taking Danny Ainge to task on this show. Justin Elaine is taking Danny Ainge to task. I mean, my God. I don't know where I am. I feel like I'm in Bizarro World right now, but I've been saying it for years. Look at the scoreboard, and I feel like if you ask anybody, I mean, to not get 2 championships out of that team, I think is a huge failure. That 07-08 team, So I think that he's made it. I think he's just been able to sit back there. I think if there was anybody else, think about if the Red Sox, if their GM was there for 17 years and only had 1 championship, what type of crap you'd give them. And, I just feel like we don't do that at all with Ainge. We give him this pass because we're happy to be 50 games, to have a team that tries hard. Feel like guys aren't necessarily – there's that whole Celtics – is that whole thing where everybody's just happy to have a 50-win team and guys that try hard. And I feel like get to the A seed necessarily or get to the 4 seed and don't win, but –
it's like if Hayward years ago, the buildup since 2013 was we're getting these draft picks, and I think he's done a great job of getting Jaylen and Tatum with those picks. Then obviously we traded for Kyrie with one of those picks, which at the time seemed like a great trade. If Gordon Hayward doesn't go down, that team probably could have gone really far. It's unfortunate that it didn't happen. We are set for the long haul. I just wish sometimes that we would have a roster on the bench, maybe 1 or 2 veterans instead of Tremont Waters and Langford, Robert Williams. Like, we need more veterans that have been in the playoffs. We don't need rookies. And they're all on rookie contracts. I get it because you have to pay Hayward. You got to pay Kemba and all these guys. It's just frustrating. You would hope that we were gone to the finals at least in the past 4 years once.
You can't say Danny Ainge is bad at his job, but look, Chiarelli won a championship, couldn't get him out of here fast enough. Theo Epstein won a championship for the first time in 86 years. They couldn't get rid of him fast enough. That's what ego does in sports. That's what a couple bad seasons do in sports. So for you to think that in 18 years, having won championship isn't enough. It isn't. It's just not.
I will say the Red Sox have they fired like 3 or 4 GMs since Dan Egan's just been here too. Like he's had a great run, and who knows if that trade never happened to get Garnett and Ray Allen, who knows how long he would have even been there. He was in the hot seat.
If Mikhail's not the GM of that team, we may never get Garnett.
I mean, they got Sebastian Telfair from us. They got a bunch of all-stars.
They got
Gerald Green.
They had to pick Gomes. Gomes that really hurt.
It wasn't very good at basketball, but it looked great.
Well, that's really all that counts. That's half the battle in sports.
And Boston fans at the time were like, I don't want to give up Al Jefferson. He's a future. Like, he's awesome.
If we're going to get AG in the last year of his prime, you shut your mouth.
The only fans in Boston where they think everybody that we acquire is going to be good. The Patriots have gotten some of this in the last 10 years because we've been so good. But Celtics fans forever are like, well, we would have won in 87 if Bill Walton wasn't hurt. We would have won in 90 if Larry Bird just didn't shovel his parents' driveway. We would have won in 09 if Garnett wasn't hurt. And I believe some of these things. But Celtics fans forever will tell you that we would have won every single championship if we were healthy every year.
Yeah, and the other thing is they overvalue their players. Like if you didn't watch basketball and you just heard people say about Marcus Smart, you would think he's the best player on the team, and he is a perennial all-star. Like there are players that the Celtics have that are good. Yeah, Jay Crowder is another great one. Good system players. Brad is great at making players good. Another one's Evan Turner. Like everyone thought he was.
Evan Turner is like a winning basketball player, and he's so awkward. He's a small little gem for me as a basketball consumer. I love his game.
They literally will create stats to value their guys. Like there's no quantifiable thing that you can say about Marcus Smart. So they created this thing. They were like, he's 25th in tipped balls. When they signed him to that 4-year, $50 million contract, it's like they will literally come up with their own stats to quantify that a guy is good or not.
There were actually fans that wanted to keep Kelly Olynyk before he went to the Heat. People actually thought Kelly Olynyk was a great basketball player. He had 1 or 2 good games in 4 years, and the rest of it was just inconsistencies. And the only good thing was he broke Kevin Love's arm.
Yeah, I heard a good stat tonight. He's the all-time leader in 3-pointers made for guys 6'11" and above. What a notable stat.
We take that from Rafe LaFrentz.
Yeah, Rafe LaFrentz. He was like the original.
Remember him and Vin Baker were a good front court.
I'm surprised Dirk didn't have that 3-point title. What's that about? How did he not have that?
Yeah, maybe they weren't saying he was a 7-footer.
As many.
How tall are they saying Dirk was then, I guess? I mean,
7 foot.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, well, we just fact-checked that one real quick. So the Celtics, we talked about them a little bit. They lose the first game against the Bucks with a couple questionable calls down the end. And Marcus Smart, kind of talked to it. He got a $15,000 fine. What did you guys think about the calls down the stretch? Because I definitely thought Giannis got a star's well.
Boo! Brutal. I mean, as a
Brutal.
fan,
as a Celtics fan, you know, expect it. You know what's happening. It's a superstar whistle. It's a thing. We all know it exists. But having it go against your own team, nothing cuts you as bad as that. Them reversing that charge on Marcus Smart, bailing Giannis out over and over again. It's just not okay. I guess there's an agenda, and there's a lot of bookies that have quotas to hit and money to make. And, now that the NBA is back, obviously the refs aren't letting anything slide because they've only got a few regular season games to make as much money as they can from their bribes and whatnot. So that's my take on it.
I mean, Marcus Smart, thinking in the NBA, he's kind of like Marshawn. He's a pest, but Marcus Smart flops an awful lot, and referees look out for that. I'm not saying the call it shouldn't have gone that way, but he flops all the time, and refs get sick of it. And if he didn't do that all the time, maybe the call would have went a different way. But again, this is a star league, and Giannis is the MVP, and they're not going to foul him out to give Marcus an extra foul.
I thought that was amazing when they were going to when I even got the first thought that they were going to reverse that call. I was like, I cannot believe they're going to reverse it. I just thought, for as much hate as I give Marcus Smart, I thought that was clearly a charge.
Really?
I mean, I did.
I didn't think it was a charge. I got to be honest. I thought he was late getting there. I do. I think he was late. I absolutely think he was late getting there. Look, you'd like it to be more like football. It goes to you this late in game, if it's not blatantly obvious, I'd like you to leave it alone. Human error is okay. It's okay. Refs getting things wrong as long as you're not taking 12 minutes to figure out what it is. I think they got that one right. There was a couple maybe off-ball screens he could have got called for. I think at one point he punched somebody right in like the liver. So like,
what was that whole thing? They call it what do they call it? Something act? No, what do they call it? Like a whatever act or something they call it.
Look, I don't think it was great. There was clearly some influence there, but I think on the charge call alone in that isolated incident, I think he was late getting there. I absolutely love that he got 15,000 because take that right on the chin. You have to state your claim, much like Phil Jackson, Doc Rivers. You campaign through the media. This is what you do. You've always been able to kind of bully refs through reporting, and I think that's good. I think the flopping does hurt him, but something like taking 15 on the chin because you were, almost there and you want that call. I do believe on anybody not Giannis or LeBron, he's probably getting that call, but I think he was late. I think he was late getting there, and I think. Again, if it was charged, if it was called a block, I'd like it to stay a block. In professional sports, it's okay. It's bang, bang. If you call it a block, it's got to stay a block. If you called a charge, it would have been a charge. But I think personally, he was late.
I think, too, if Giannis had 4 fouls and not 5, maybe that's a charge. But the NBA, especially where they're bringing NBA back in the bubble, you can have the MVP getting kicked out of a game when the game's that close at the end, especially in a game that potentially could be the Eastern Conference Finals this year. If you had 4, maybe you would never see LeBron game.
It's funny when you watch these games down the stretch too, and just knowing you're like Giannis isn't going to foul out of this one, or I can remember back in the day, Kobe would get fouled blatantly by a guy like Wally Zerbiak, and they call the foul, or Kobe would foul a guy like Wally Zerbiak or something, and they would doesn't get that.
I did that. That was.
Yeah, so I mean, it's just kind of funny, watching the games going down the stretch, knowing the narrative. It's like Giannis isn't going to foul out here, so I mean, I guess you have to think.
I think that's why the Celtics always struggle against the Rockets.
For the record,
they can't keep up with all the fouls.
Jason Tatum will never foul out either. Just so we're clear, Jason Tatum is going to be one of those guys. He will also never foul out, and he's going to be guarding some of the better players on other teams. If him and Jaylen reach their ceilings or are close to it, they're going to be elite two-way players. And unlike Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum will absolutely never get called for that. Absolutely. He will never, ever, ever foul out as long as he continues to ascend into superstardom. And I like that about the NBA, by the way. It's the difference in online video games. Like in NBA 2K, you always have to take out some players. Fatigue's a big factor. I bought the game to play with LeBron. And in the playoffs, why would I want a player to foul out? I don't care if Jordan punches a guy in the chest. I came to this game to see Michael Jordan. I do not want him to foul out if he stabs a guy. Steve Kerr goes to jail if Michael Jordan stabs a guy. If Kobe Bryant stabs a guy, Lamar Odom, see you later. Smush Parker, see you later. I want them in the game. I'm sorry. Marcus Smart is a great winning basketball player. You take a charge on Giannis when he's got 5 fouls, it's a guaranteed blocking foul because it's Giannis. I don't mind that. It sucked that it was against my team, and in this particular circumstance, I think they got the call right. But even if they didn't, I don't want that called. Just defensive pass interference with 2 seconds left, you're not getting that call. You know why? I don't want that to change. Even if you get it wrong, like the Saints game, I kind of still don't want that. I mean, that one was blatant. But generally speaking, if it's close, I don't want the whistle deciding it. I wish they didn't blow it up.
That Saints one, I still just can't get over that. That guy blatantly tackled him. I mean, my God.
NFL Blitz, the old school video game, when guys knocks him out.
I just couldn't believe that they let that fly. I mean, poor Drew Brees, honestly.
That and the Calvin Johnson touchdown. You guys remember the Calvin Johnson touchdown that they called back where he was clearly, where he put the ball down? Well, there was a Dez Bryant one too, but there's a Calvin Johnson one that I believe is even more he just catches it obviously and puts the ball down afterwards, and they call it out.
It's exactly how sport catch, pass, rush, intercept. that tackle. Those are like the main things in your sport. And you can't define one of them in 100 years of playing your sport. You can't define one of the integral parts of your fucking sport. One of the pillars of your sport, one of the basic fundamentals of your sport, you can't define it. And for 40 years, it's been a topic of conversation because you can't define it. Go back. Did he catch the ball and did he make a football move? I understand what a football move is. I never understood the backlash of that. What is a football move? It's a friggin' move. If you're an athlete, did you make an athletic maneuver? I'll tell you. Looking to play, any athlete's like, oh no, he fell down. Or, oh yeah, no, he got that ish. Like, come on now. Like,
Yeah, they've struggled for a long time to be able to get the catch rules down. I mean, I feel like if that Calvin Johnson one isn't a catch and if the Des Bryant one isn't a catch, then you really can't define for me what a catch is because those guys clearly caught the ball.
How about the Pats game a couple years ago in Steelers and that tight end dropped the ball in the end zone? That wasn't a catch, but it's like
and then against the Eagles in the Super Bowl. Literally did the same exact thing, and they called it a touchdown.
We wonder why all fans hate us. It's because we do get a good amount of those calls. Like the Edelman a couple years ago when the ball somehow didn't touch his thumb on that punt return.
And our whole dynasty is based off of one call that went the wrong way. I mean, ask Charles Woodson about that call in the snow. That
guy's the wrong way.
Still saying BS to that call to this day.
Brady will never admit it either. Big smirk on his face when he asks him.
So talking about the Celtics still, they give up a 24-point lead in the win over the Blazers. Any concern with that, guys?
I think with young teams in the NBA, concern over blowing big leads should always be there. I think it's a veteran team that can really flip a switch and that they can kind of decide. If you're a team like the Celtics, I don't think you're a switch team. I think you have to try every possession. And yes, that's Brad Stevens' system. Yes, that's how we've built our team probably since, that Garnett, Paul Pierce regime left. But when you're this young, I mean, we love Jason Tatum. I love Jason Tatum. Jason Tatum is 21 years old. Jaylen Brown is 23 years old. They're young players. And you're going to blow some leads because you believe your own stuff. I mean, some of the interviews we did after we lost to the Cavaliers were really telling because young players can really get an inflated ego. We have no big man, so any night where we don't get a consistent rebounding effort, we're bound to blow a lead. It's tough the way our roster is comprised of just wing players to ensure we can hold off on a big lead. We don't have grinders. We don't have big guys who can ensure that you get a couple offensive rebounds and keep your possession. We don't have a lot of guys that get to the rim if Jason Tatum's not going to the basket. To get free throws and slow down runs. I think we're going to see that a lot, particularly early on.
Yeah, I think Celtics this whole year have been blowing leads. Like they get a big first half lead and they start to blow it. And you can see it during the game. They change their offensive system. It's not getting the open shot. It's more ISO basketball and Marcus Smart hucking up 10 threes. It's not like if you stick to the system the whole game, I don't think they'd run into those issues. But for some reason, whenever they get a big lead, they kind of ease back, start changing, not passing as much, more ISO basketball. And Jason Tatum's the only guy on the court that should be doing any ISO moves. Nobody else should be doing any ISO moves.
I think I could let Kemba Walker and Jaylen Brown play some ISO basketball. I don't really want to see Gordon Hayward do it anymore, but I can definitely let Jaylen Brown and Kemba Walker do some stuff. Speaking of Kemba, he just hit a ridiculous half-court buzzer beater at the end of the third quarter to make the score 83-91. Celtics, man, they love coming from behind. They've been behind on the Heat all night, and it looks like they're coming back again. That's the thing we're talking about, though. When they have a lead, you just never feel safe with them having a lead. But when they're down, I mean, you just have the confidence that they have every last piece of relentlessness in them to come back and win that game. I don't know if it's coming from the coach down where it's all that underdog mentality, but with this team, I mean, when they're down, I expect them to come back and win the game.
Yeah, you talk about Kemba kind of playing in ISO, and I think he's really been one of the bright spots of the Celtics. I think if you have him to finish out that game the other night, you probably are talking about a whole different outcome. I think that was a big part of the 24-point slack off, when you have guys like, you just have scrubs coming in there and running point. Whereas
Brad Wanamaker is a former
perfect
D-League
that was the
MVP.
scrub that I was looking for. And a guy that you don't want to see on the court, and a guy that in, playoff wins, is probably only going to see a couple minutes or so, Brad Wanamaker. But, I thought it was just great to see Kemba get out there, make some buckets. I thought he looked good in his limited time, and I think in some more minutes he's going to look pretty good for us. I think if you can have 4 guys on this team that can score 20 points in the playoffs, I mean, they can get any team, guys, here when they're when they're all contributing.
Any team in the East.
They can be as dangerous as anybody.
But you guys think, though, like a couple years ago when it was Isaiah's team, and you had Crowder, you had Avery Bradley, they came back from deficits all the time. It wasn't a talent thing. It was more like an effort thing because those players have to try hard because they're not very good. Whereas now sometimes they ease off when they have these leads. Whereas in the past, you remember that Rockets comeback when Marcus Smart got James Harden that foul? They were down by like 25, 28 points. It was defense. It was trying hard. Sometimes, just have to stick with it. And that's why Marcus Smart, fortunately, is good for this team because when he comes in, he is that person to, push people's buttons and keep them on the level playing field that they have to keep playing defense and playing hard.
God, I wish they'd sign Isaiah Thomas to back up Kemba. God, I wish they'd do it. Please, Danny, if you hear me. Please.
It'd be like a 10-0 run for the other team, with all the shots that he's going to give up. He'd probably score like 8 points in his minutes, would probably like give up 15.
We have Tremont Waters, guys. He's 5'4". He's a great point guard.
And we also had Isaiah Cannon and Gabe Pruitt. We had Orion Green. Listen, the lineage of undersized, underskilled for some reason.
Don't forget J.R. Bremer.
Sorry?
Don't forget J.R. Bremer.
Bremer's a goat.
Oh, yeah. No.
They 3-point specialist.
They love undersized guards who are a little bit underskilled for some reason, and they have for a mighty long time. Look, I would have liked the Isaiah Thomas thing just because I think he's box office. And look, his hip was torn apart. He'll never be the same guy. But what are we really asking for? We're asking you for the same thing that the Lakers are asking J.R. Smith for. Like, if we can get 8 minutes of you scoring 8 points, even if your plus minus is 0, I think we'll take it. I think that we'll go as far as Kemba Walker's knee goes. If he can give you 20, 25 minutes a game and Jason Tatum can be a top 10 basketball player in the world, we'll be fine. We'll be fine. And the fact that we're not on the road really helps us. I mean, I know we lose a home court advantage, but with a young team, they're either motivated or they're not, which is, what you said about defense. You see that on the defensive side of the floor, whether or not they're invested in the game, or whether or not they're trying hard. And I think as long as Kemba Walker's knee is healthy enough to give us 2025, we'll be fine.
I think this no fans thing is huge for this young team too, because the past couple of years in the road in the playoffs, it's like a completely different team. They can't do anything. They get blown out. But when they come to the Garden, you have all the fans cheering for you. Players like Terry Rozier all of a sudden become, really good players. But on the road, it's just a different story. So I agree. I do think this will be helpful. And Kemba coming back and giving 25 minutes, a couple threes here and there will definitely help.
Yeah, guys, and you talk about the road ahead, and the road ahead is going to be pretty ominous in the playoffs. It looks like the Celtics are going to lock up that 3rd seed. They're probably going to have to play the 3 most talented teams I would consider in the East, in the 76ers, the Raptors, and the Bucks. And one huge takeaway for me this weekend with the Raptors is just they are a team that's on the for real. And I thought all through the season, not having Kawhi, I just thought, they're a team that, they're putting together some wins in the Eastern Conference. But you look at them the other night, they have a guy like Van Fleet put up 36. And then with some of the height that they have in Gasol and Ibaka, and you just saw them tear apart the Lakers, who I really respect. The Lakers just locked up the number 1 seed in the Western Conference. So they put up a big effort against them. And I just think the Raptors are our team that's for real. As we look ahead, guys, we've got the 76ers, Raptors, and Bucks. Which team is scaring you the most at the moment out of those 3 teams?
The Raptors, I think, honestly, I feel like we can beat the Bucks if the Celtics play their best basketball. I think that we can definitely converge on Giannis. I think that we were the better team the other night. We didn't even have Kemba really playing very much. That Raptors team, they're a scary team. I mean, Gasol, no one's really talking about Gasol anymore, but he's still like a tier 2 player in this league. Pascal Siakam's made the jump. Van Vliet's looking like he's going to get paid close to max money in the offseason. I mean, Kyle Lowry's still doing his thing, and they've got a great bench player. They've got a bunch of great bench players as well and a great head coach. I think the Raptors are the team to look out for.
The Raptors have the best coach in the NBA. and they don't scare me at all. I still, it's not that I don't believe in them. I believe that this has an overlap. I think when you have a really, really great special thing and it comes to fruition, after it leaves, you still have some residual success. I think they're sticking it to everybody. They have that chip on their shoulder. You have a great coach and a hardworking team determined to prove that it wasn't a fluke or that it wasn't Kawhi. But I think next year they're a prime candidate to miss the playoffs. And this year, I think it will end unceremoniously to a team that they're undoubtedly better than, because I just think that they have it.
If they had Kawhi Leonard, they would probably win the NBA championship this year.
I agree.
Oh, hands down, I would agree with that.
If they have Batman in them, they'd be shitty Bucks, but they have Batman in them. Kawhi Leonard is not on the Raptors, so it's not gonna work.
Nick Nurse is hands down the best coach in the league. He got screwed, I think. And I think getting back to when the season started, the message from that whole, like the offseason was, stick with the same mentality we had last year. Don't go into the season like we won or Kawhi isn't here anymore. They want to prove everybody wrong. They do have a good bench. They do have good role players. But still, the best player potentially in the league is on the Bucks. And Chris Middleton, for some reason, tears us up every single time. And I don't think Chris Middleton is a great player by any means.
Is it because he's tall? It goes back to that wing player thing. No, I'm not interrupting you. Keep going. But that's why because he's 6'9", and he can shoot. He shoots over his head as a very high release. And if it's not short on him, we have some usually out there trying to stop that.
I just think you have to beat the Bucks. It kind of has to go back to LeBron days in the early years when he was on Cleveland. Your Giannis is going to get his. If you can shut Middleton down, if you can somewhat limit, Lopez and Bledsoe, even though Bledsoe sucks, I think we have a really good chance. But when Middleton is 30, we're not going to win.
Well, I also think what you got to do to Giannis, like you had to do to an early LeBron, is make him shoot. He really doesn't have a mid-range game at this point. And I think if you can take guys like Ogilvy, and you really got to keep him out of the paint if you're looking at the numbers this year. He converts at an insanely high percentage in the paint. I believe it's over 66% or something like that. And outside of the paint, he's down in like the 40s or 30s maybe even. And, you just got to be able to keep him out of the paint. So you got to put a lot of bodies on him. You got to change up the bodies each time he comes over half court. The guys that are going out to get him, make things difficult, make sure that he doesn't get clean releases. But I would say that for Toronto, just hitting on them for a second, I think they kind of like lead the league in buy-in in their coach, right? We talk about, if coaching really means a lot in the NBA. And I think the Raptors are somebody that really buys into their coaching. They kind of buy into their belief. And you just see these guys, these absolute bulldogs that are killing it. I couldn't believe the LA game, quite honestly. You're seeing an old Kyle Lowry, I think he's 34, 35, putting up 22 still. And, you're seeing what Siakam, who was leading the league in points out of the gate, can do. So it's just, it's the Raptors are a tough team, and I'm honestly a little bit scared of them.
I also think that
we have a guy that would be a big-time defensive force down low in Robert Williams. I think he can get lost sometimes, but if you stick him in that defense and you say, just look at Giannis the whole time, I think that he would actually be able to make a huge impact at least not to that insane conversion percentage down around the basket.
I mean, Giannis is what a free throw shooter. He's like 60%. Like if you bring Robert Williams and Semi Ojeleye and just keep fouling him. Because he's free throw percentage, I think he's like 50%. So late in game, just keep fouling. And if we get in the penalty, we get in the penalty. But I'd rather that than him getting easy buckets or passing enough for threes. Robert Williams come in and get 6 fouls. Like, that's all he has to do. He doesn't have to do anything else.
Also, it's one or the other, right? So if you keep Giannis from getting to the basket, you need more than one player to do that. So it's really, are you going to stop Giannis from getting to the basket, or are you going to let him get his and stop everybody else? I do think those things are mutually exclusive. I simply don't think you can do both. Certainly, we don't have a player that can do both. If you have an elite center, Montrezl Harrell or Kawhi or even a Paul George, if you have that guy, maybe one guy gets it done. But I don't think you keep Giannis from the basket without more than one guy, and I don't want to double. I don't want open threes. I don't want a chance for role players to get good shots. Because inevitably, Giannis, even if we do well, is going to get 20. So why not let him get 40? Stop the rest of the team. If that team scores 80 or 90, they lose.
I agree 100%. I forgot to mention we do have Taco Fall. So, I mean, Honestly, just bring these guys in.
We don't have a lot of top-tier talent outside of Giannis.
Let him get
So
hit.
They do have a lot of height. They have both Lopez brothers. They have Giannis. They rebound very well, and that's the biggest thing. If we end up beating any of these teams, the Raptors, I think we're going to. We're going to need a rebound. We're so undersized. We've been bad at it the
my
entirety.
point of being is that they don't have a lot of talent that they can bring off the score. I mean, you've got like Kyle Korvers and stuff like that. You don't have people that are that scary coming off their bench. You've got George Hill, certain guys like that, but I don't feel like you really fear their team. The Celtics are really kind of, heavy up top. And I feel like the Bucks are only heavy through a couple guys, really. They're heavy through Giannis and Middleton. So if you can stop those two guys, really stop almost 2/3 of their production, I feel like.
Well, if I give up everything I possibly can to get a Bradley Beal or another, player that I can get this offseason.
Malcolm
Yeah, give him this point guard back. I agree. Like, they don't have much talent around, but who would you rather have hitting a shot in the playoffs? Kyle Korver or Brad Wanamaker, or Kyle Korver or Marcus Smart or any Romeo Langford? They have guys that have done it. And I've always been a George Hill fan. I think he's a good backup point guard for a team to come in the playoffs, give you 10 to 12 minutes. He's not going to screw up. He might hit a couple shots. We don't have that.
Also, I'm no huge Bledsoe fan at all, but he's a guy who can go get a bucket with nobody else. He can get his own shot. So when you're talking about, a lack of depth on the Milwaukee Bucks, sure. But outside of Giannis, because Middleton, I think, struggles to get his own shot. Bledsoe can get his own shot, and I think that's important. I've always thought that he's overrated in the league, but he's pivotal for that team. They don't have a lot besides Giannis moving the ball around and good coach. I think Budenholzer is a good coach.
I think it'd be interesting maybe put Tatum on Middleton if we play him in the playoffs and try to limit him the size, because Middleton is really tall, and you deal with a double team effort against Giannis, because Middleton puts up 40 against us every time with Jaylen Brown on him. You need Tatum on him, shut him down, limit him to under 20.
Don't you just want – see, I just want Jaylen Brown to keep taking his lumps. I don't care how many air balls Kobe Bryant shoots in Utah. He needs to keep taking them, because when he gets to Sacramento, when he gets to Portland, we're going to need him to hit those goddamn shots. When Shaq's in foul trouble against the Nets, we're going to need Kobe Bryant. So if he needs to shoot 4 air balls in the same goddamn game in Utah, let it happen. If Jaylen Brown is going to keep getting spanked by Chris Middleton, let it keep happening, because I expect Jaylen Brown to be a defensive stud. And it's not going to happen if you put Jason Tatum on him. Jason Tatum needs to score 28 points a game for us to be a legitimate finals contender. So Jaylen Brown's going to need to pick. He's going to need to play that defense.
Didn't he do that against the Clippers this year? He was guarding Kawhi in that game, and he put up 40.
Right, sure, but the two-way thing for Jason Tatum is going to be a lot harder. Jaylen Brown, it's hard for you to get your shot, go play defense. There are going to be times where Jason Tatum doesn't have it on both sides of the floor. He's going to need it on the offense. I'm sorry, it's a bad way to look at it. Understand if you're Jordan fan, you defense too. Look, it's a different time, and these athletes don't do well playing both sides of the ball. You can't really name me one besides Kawhi that can maintain it. Even Paul George, his best offensive games usually come where his defense lags. His best defensive games usually comes when he's 6 of 14.
Yeah, I just think maybe switching it up every once in a while, not for a full game, but if Milton's getting hot, maybe switch it up. Just give them different looks.
Multiple bodies is a huge thing in basketball. Yeah. It's a huge thing in football. Don't get me wrong. A change-up is always an important thing in sports. Like, switching it up is hugely important. I just think Tatum's not the answer for Middleton. Like on switches and the transition, obviously everybody's got to play defense. And like I said, he's going to be an elite two-way player. But right now, I think Jaylen Brown's going to be our Bruce Bowen if we become a championship team. So let him keep taking those lumps until he can effing do it.
All right. Well, with that being said, I think that's going to conclude it for this edition of Open Season. And we will catch everybody next week. Same time, same place.